I once had a friend who lived on Prince Edward Island, Canada. He was a man who was the victim of unfortunate circumstances. More specifically, a haunted update for the Valve-made game Team Fortress 2, developed in the Source engine. The two of us encountered strange encounters since October 29th, 2018, such as random disconnects and foggy maps draped in shadows. My friend always said there was more to see, but the other two friends, including myself, never believed him. To be honest, it is one of my biggest regrets in life. A few days after that, the Discord servers went down, and when they came back, there was a major change. My friend, the first victim of the shadows, was deleted from Discord, from Steam, from the face of the earth. The only way I knew he had passed away was when I found his body in his apartment, with the door hanging open and a wrench stuck on the door handle. His eyes were stained red, and there was a hole where his heart should be. I took the computer from the apartment before calling 911. I decided to take it home and see what else led to my friend's death.
I booted up his computer, and instantly I felt a wave of unease pass over the entire room. At the time, I thought it was just guilt over my friend's death, but I guess hindsight is 20/20. The computer seemed to run fine, if a bit laggy for a while. On my computer, lag would be normal, but I knew that my friend had a top-of-the-line gaming rig. 32 gigabytes of RAM was more than enough to run File Manager without lagging, yet it lagged. I decided to run Task Manager to see what was taking up so much RAM. File Manager only took up 5% of RAM and 7% of CPU, but right now was a program I hadn't opened. Half-Life 2. Despite its misleading name, I knew that game anywhere. I knew that Team Fortress 2 was open on his computer after it had been shut off, and its owner dead for days. I hadn't even opened Steam. I assumed I must have clicked on it by accident since its shortcut was right next to File Manager. It seemed like a reasonable explanation, but TF2 wasn't open. I decided to ignore it and tried to close it from Task Manager.
No matter what I did, the application wouldn't close. This was unnerving. Did my friend die due to his game not closing? That sounded plausible. I looked at the time on my clock. It was 7:42 p.m. EST, but then it kept flashing 6:66 a.m. on the clock occasionally. I was beginning to get scared. That definitely wasn't natural. I decided to keep going forward and clicked on the TF2 icon beside Task Manager. The game loaded up with a completely black screen and no audio. Then, a distorted version of the Valve guy appeared, with his neck broken and the valve removed from his head. The audio was all garbled and could not be understood. I sat in my chair, sitting in my chair, and thinking about the gruesome scene that was my friend was part of, as I waited for the title screen to appear.
The title screen wouldn't load for a few minutes, so I decided to leave and get some snacks. After all, supper had been almost 3 hours ago, and all I ate was a PB&J sandwich. After getting some cereal, I came back to see in the few minutes I was gone, the screen change, but not the title. Instead of the image of the Valve guy, there were 2 glowing yellow dots on the otherwise black screen. I tried to Alt-Tab out, but it didn't work. I tried to open Task Manager and even tried Alt F4, but the screen didn't change. Okay, I'll play your way, I said to no one in particular as I put on my headset and wheeled my chair into my desk.
Wheeling into my desk, I wheeled way too hard and my face went flying towards the monitor. However, when I thought my face was going to hit the screen, I instead got sucked into the computer. Landing on my feet, I was confused. How did I get inside of Team Fortress 2? I spawned into a void with a single button on the home screen, search for game. Not being able to do anything else, I decided to click the button with my clicker finger. I saw something at the top of my peripheral vision, a bar that said searching for game. I tried wandering around the black void while I waited for a game to load.
As I walked in the void, I noticed that the searching for game button didn't get any smaller no matter how far away I walked, so I decided to give up and wait. Exactly 10 minutes and 6 seconds, or 666 seconds after queuing, I loaded up into a game. The map said Turbine, and it seemed normal until the other players spawned in. I was a demo man, and each one of each class joined. During warm-up I stayed in spawn, but when the game would have normally started, instead of a normal capture the flag game starting, it just said, survive.
What did it mean, survive? Surely, it wasn't going to make me actually fight out there. When I was able to move my legs again, all my teammates exploded in spawn, with blood and gore flying everywhere. In chat, it said they had all disconnected due to being dead. The spawn doors then disappeared, and the scoreboard was opened by an unknown force. I was the only player left, against a team of 9 enemies who were out for blood. I knew I couldn't stay in spawn, as they would kill me quick. Stepping out of spawn, I swapped through my weapons to see what I had. A default grenade launcher, a tide turner, and an eyelander. Hopefully, I could use these to defeat anyone I saw. As I proceeded to walk forward, I saw a scout at the end of the tunnel, face deformed and broken, and his body was entirely black.
I decided to rush at the scout with a tide. My tide turner before he could see me, and I couldn't believe it. It worked. Once I had killed the scout, I decided to go back to spawn to hide, but I was locked out. I had no safe place from these things. I decided I would camp fence and wait for them to come to me, and sure enough, they did. I was able to kill the medic, sniper, pyro, and spy without taking even a single point of damage. Eventually, all they had left was their heavy, engineer, soldier, and demo man. I was able to kill the soldier, but I took 7 damage, and when I went to pick up a health pack, there were none. I had to be much more careful from now on. Luckily, I just had the heavy, demo, and engineer left. The demo went down fairly easily, and during the heavy fight, I lost some health. But once they were dead, I heard a voice line, from nowhere in particular, saying, "You shouldn't have played with fire. He was a good bit.
I turned around, seeing nothing at all. In fact, the entire map completely despawned. As I turned back, I was now in CTF_sawmill, only with one difference. Every building besides the spawn building was completely destroyed, and there was a thick fog covering the map. My health was brought to 150 again, but was draining incredibly fast. As I turned behind me again, I saw the shadow engineer moving behind me with no animations beside his hands moving while he smacked his wrench against the objects. Anything the wrench touched was instantly destroyed and crumbled to dust. I noticed he had an aura around him, and whenever I stepped out of it, my health began to regenerate. But with every object he hit, the aura became bigger. I ran straight out of spawn, the word survive now flashing on my screen.
I ran away as fast as I could, but it became increasingly more difficult as the aura was growing. Soon it would take up the entire map, and there would be nothing I could do. I started to wonder if this was what had happened to my friend. Did the shadow engineer just play with him as well, like a cat playing with a mouse? My mind was racing about what my next move should be. Once the aura made up the whole map, it would be better to die in the aura while trying to survive. Or would it be better to run into his wrench and get it over with? My mind was darting, trying to think of what to do. And what was the better of 2 options, or trying to figure out a third option? I looked for an exit, but there was nothing. I decided to hide with the intel, accepting my fate, and waiting for the engineer to come for me.
When I went into my intel room, I pushed up against the intel and picked it up. Confused, I tried to drop it, but it refused to detach itself from my back. Eventually, the aura mixed with the fog, and everything became a black void, except for a small area of light that was emitted by the briefcase. I could feel perfectly fine while standing in the dense fog, but anything near the dim light got immediately dissolved. I could feel the water on my feel lower by a lot as well. Then, I heard the Shadow Engineer's laughter. Not only did I have to navigate through pitch black, but I had to run away from whatever direction the sound of the engineer's laughter was coming from.
I heard the engineer's laugh coming from my right, so I headed to my left, but then it was coming from my front. It seemed no matter which way I turned, he was there. He had me from the beginning. There was no escape. I thought all hope was lost until I found a doorway. The engineer told me not to enter, but would only further urge me on.
Walking to the door, I greeted it with a smile and a friendly attitude. "Hello?" I said as I saw the Shadow Engineer standing at my door. He grabbed me and threw me to the back of the wall. As I hit the wall, the intelligence fell off my back and landed beside me. I grabbed onto it desperately as the engineer hit me with his wrench, saying one final voice line, "Tagged ya." And as I got hit, I woke up in my bed with my entire room upturned and destroyed. My desk was cracked and broken, apart from the computer I took from my friend. I looked at it with horror. If that was what my friend experienced, then no wonder he was dead.
I grabbed the computer to throw outside, but on my way upstairs with the computer, I heard a knock on my door. I opened the door, the computer in my hands. My friend who died was at the door. He asks for his computer back, and when I hesitate, he lurches forward, trying to desperately fought for my hands. "You couldn't have left well enough alone, couldn't you? You wanted to take the computer from a dead man. Well, soon enough, you will be the dead one." I threw the computer at him and tried to run away, but he grabbed me by the neck and knocks me on the head. When I came to, I'm tied up on the ground with a pentagram and candles around me. My friend pulls out a knife, his skin decaying rapidly while he moves to slice my stomach open. He then starts to climb into my body, and I lost consciousness again. After what must have been hours, I wake up, but I'm not moving myself. My hand waves in front of my face, and I start to laugh. But this is not my laugh. This one is deeper. "Thanks for the body," the voice of the Shadow Engineer explained how he had control of my body forever. But as he was talking, his voice slowly morphed into mine. I see that any trace of the pentagram or ritual were gone, and then a knock comes at the door. I try to shout at him, but he says, "Shh, Mom and Dad are over. Better be quiet. It would be a shame if they decided to join me."
I have been hearing weird stories and rumors about my friend. My friend knew that his friend lived on Prince Edward Island, Canada, and that weird stuff had been happening to him and his computer. His friend was doing analytic geometry homework when he booted up Steam, and his life seemed to go downhill. I knew the guy vaguely, and he was always really outgoing, but he rarely talked to me specifically. I wouldn't have cared too terribly much what happened to him, but I heard that he's been linked to the sudden odd behavior of a friend. He seems to carry this deep, damn near demonic laughter, and any socials of him have either become cursed or outright vanished. Whenever I call him, I only hear what sounds like the engineer from TF2's laughter, but it must be my head messing with me. My friend couldn't be the engineer.
I've tried to reach out to his family, but as soon as I mention I'm looking for my friend, they go silent and stop answering my questions. Would it be crazy to go check on him? Maybe I'm paranoid, but I feel like there's more to this than it seems. After all, this wouldn't be his...
Hopping into my 2006 Honda Civic, I immediately began my drive from my home to Zealand. The estimated time of arrival was around 3 hours and 47 minutes, but as soon as I put my foot on the gas, my mind went all fuzzy. I only remember glimpses of me driving before I felt myself lose all memories again. When I finally regained my consciousness, I felt stiff and groggy. I checked the time and day on my phone, and it was around 4 hours after I left home. So I did arrive on time, even though I couldn't remember 90% of the trip. But my jaw dropped when I saw the date on my phone. It had been almost 5 weeks since I left. The date was October 29th, 2019, but when I left, it was September 27th, 2019. I could feel small amounts of cobwebs breaking as I moved my limbs around, trying to rid myself of the stiffness of my joints. Where was I?
As I exited my car, I could tell I wasn't in Zealand. The bright lights staggered my unadjusted eyes. I wasn't too far from the nearest village, and since my car was out of gas, I decided to walk. When I arrived at the village, I could tell I was somewhere in Central America. I tried to talk to the locals, but everyone ran from me and shouted something I couldn't understand. It seemed everyone was petrified of me, which was strange since I didn't recognize this place and had never been there before. I covered up my face and grabbed a newspaper. Every single article was about a brutal murderer who had stalked the town a few weeks ago. What are the odds that something like that happens right as I arrived? So strange.
As I lowered the newspaper, all the buildings seemed to be old, decrepit, and completely void of life. Any of the locals I once spoke to were gone, and the air was thick with fog. The light gray enveloped me as the edges of the town became black, impossible to see past. Lights flickered on as laughter filled my head, laughter that sounded all too familiar. It was the laugh of the engineer from Team Fortress 2, the game that had now begun to torment me and my friends. I walked down the now lit street, arriving just outside the only building that seemed to have a functioning door. It was a small wooden shack, but a large amount of power lines seemed to connect to it. What was in here?
As I entered the building, I felt a chill run down my spine. White noise enveloped me. I could hear whispers, but whenever I tried to focus on something, I couldn't. As I walked further into the building, I could tell something was off. On the outside, it looked like a small shack, but the inside was giant. It felt like a server building, which would explain all the wires going in, but nothing else. As I passed a hallway, I felt the urge to go down it, which I did. I walked down for what felt like hours, but could have been minutes or honestly even seconds. Eventually, after getting nowhere, I turned around to see a dead end. I turned back to see a room in front of me. I entered it and saw 2 bodies. I was mortified to see the starving husks of my friends with hundreds of wires running into them. The room went silent for a moment, and I thought they were dead. Right as I was about to help them, my friend raised a single finger and uttered a single word.
Ew. Without warning, I felt my vision flicker for but a moment as the world around me turned to black, and when it returned, I was in a small room. No windows, no doors, just a singular light above me, and a desk with a computer on. There seemed to be small notes and items scattered around the desk, but I didn't pay them any attention as I approached the computer. With no other option, I sat down in the chair and looked at the computer screen. It seemed to be a standard, everyday copy of Windows 10, with a few desktop shortcuts for File Explorer, Recycle Bin, and Steam. But the Steam icon was very slightly different. Under it looked like a black and red streak, and the symbol itself looked almost rusted. As soon as my eyes fully took in the image of the demented Steam icon, a note on the desk flipped over by itself, showing me what was written on it.
Nitfark? What? What is a Nitfark? My mind ran, trying to figure out some logical explanation. Maybe I was on a prank show and it wasn't September. I couldn't think of any explanation, and since the computer didn't have any browser, I opened Steam. It launched instantly to a normal page. There's a store, library, and I was even logged in. Strangely, I saw a notification. I checked to see that I had a friend request pending. Someone named Didicus Nifart. Since all my other friends were offline, I accepted, hoping to ask what was going on. As soon as I'd accepted the request, I got an invite to join his TF2 game. I tried to message him to ask what was happening, but he simply responded, "Join." So I did. Damn it. I did.
Joining Didicus Niftar's game, I was pleasantly surprised to see that it was a standard, everyday game of CP_Steel. The lobby seemed to have quite a few players in it, although Didicus Niftar was nowhere to be seen. Instead, all the players had only a single letter. Reading blue team first, and then red team after, the player's name spelled out a couple words. Shadow Engineer. I was on the blue team, the Shadow team, and was wondering what the game was telling me, when all of a sudden the lights in the map began to flicker and dim as any of the lock gates swung open violently around my scout.
That scared me so much I left the match and went on normal matchmaking. After a usual 20-minute wait, I found a match on C2F, 2 Fort. Once I loaded in, however, it was CP Steel, and the same players were in as before, so I left and requeued. This continued for quite some time until I loaded into a map with someone named Margaret Thatcher. I was confused, but it was better than the other map. I found her in game, and she was the engineer, but her eyes were dark. Even though she was on the other team, I heard her voice chat. She asked me why I was here. I explained the situation, and suddenly her username changed.
XX_Engineer_XX, it said, along with the previous profile picture of Margaret Thatcher being replaced with a version with rotting skin and hollow eye sockets. XX_Shadow_Engineer_XX joined BLK team. BLK? I said to myself. Could that mean Black Team? I assumed it was a server plugin. But wait! Valve servers don't have plugins. Oh, I thought. They did just patch the game. I guess they added that as an Easter egg or something. Just then, XX_Engineer_XX spoke to me directly. Novus plays. I will not let you go to Zealand, New Brunswick. I won't let you save your friend from me.
As soon as I heard that, I was teleported to Zealand, New Brunswick. I was standing outside of my friend's apartment. In a panic, I whipped out my trusty Samsung Galaxy S21 5G and checked the time. The time was approximately 6:53 p.m., and the date was September 27th, 2019. I had got back in time to visit my friend. My fear was replaced with a feeling of victory, as I had just gone against the words of XX_Shadow_Engineer_XX. I waltzed into his apartment, dancing and grooving as I played my favorite song, Darude Sandstorm, in my earbuds. I called out to my friend, but didn't realize that I was too late until I paused the music to look around.
Looking around the apartment, I saw absolutely nothing. It was as if nobody had lived there in years, but I knew my friend should have been there. I reached for my phone to call him, but instead of my handy Samsung Galaxy S21 5G that I got on plan from Rogers for $0 down, I saw a Nokia 3310. I then looked at the date, and it was September 11, 2001. I freaked out. Was time moving backwards?
I immediately turned around and ran out of the room, knocking on any of the doors in the building to see if anyone was there. After each door gave me no response, I began to kick down the doors and rummage through the apartments. All I could find was dust. As I looked at my depressing Nokia 3310, time continued to go backwards. And in that moment, I saw something. The building was beginning to turn into a toolbox, identical in shape to the engineer's toolboxes from Team Fortress 2. XX_shadow_engineer_XX is trying to kill me to stop me from going to save my friend. I knew I had to leave the building immediately. It was too dangerous, and something tells me I wasn't the only thing in the building.
I spotted a fire escape in the distance and started to make a break for it. I heard noises behind me but didn't dare turn around. As I ran, I felt the de-aging affect my body as I started to lose years. When I made it out the door, the thing behind me let out an ear-piercing screech like the devil itself had lost its prey. I also noticed that all of the effects of the de-aging had reversed, and I was standing by a highway. In front of me, I saw a sign marking the entrance to Zealand, and past that, only fog. I considered turning around and hoping that the shadow engineer would forget about me, but I'd gone too far to turn back. Even if I did, how could I know this wasn't another one of the engineer's traps? I pressed on through the fog, and as soon as it touched me, I felt a strange sensation.
The fog was so thick, it was destroying my lungs. I felt myself dying of asphyxiation as I pushed on. My vision began to get blurry as my legs buckled. And just as I was about to pass out, the fog dissipated, and I was no longer in Zealand. Sure, everything was marked Zealand, New Brunswick, but I could tell where I was not there. I spawned into CP Gravel Pit on the blue team. I watched as my Supreme shirt changed color from white to blue, and while it was happening, I looked at the walls. There were a bunch of framed pictures, but they were all the same person. The Shadow Engineer. I stared at once angrily. I heard the announcer begin to speak over the intercom. I stared in horror. The Shadow Engineer was cosplaying as Herman Carter, aka the Doctor, from the hit game Dead by Daylight. As I looked around, I noticed that weird pallets began to materialize around the map. As well, I noticed 3 other unlucky people emerging from the darkness beside me. They too were armed with Team Fortress weaponry trademark. A redhead girl carried a sniper rifle. A long-haired man with a bushy beard wielded a rocket launcher. And a man that very oddly resembled actor Bruce Campbell was holding a minigun. As the Shadow Engineer laughed and began to walk towards us, everyone opened fire.
Our bullets had no effect, and even seemed to disintegrate the moment they exited the barrels. We started to run, but he seemed to be approximately 15% faster than us, so our only hope was to use the pallets we saw appear. The Bruce Campbell look-alike was the first to see the exit gates and how they needed power. We started working on the generators around the map as the Shadow Doctor chased the long-haired guy. After finishing repairing one generator, the long-haired man fell to the Shadow Doctor.
The redhead then began to follow the Shadow Doctor around, crouching up and down while clicking a flashlight at him. I was in awe as he began to start wildly swinging his weapon. Me and Bruce Campbell ran around, completing generator after generator. I had a sort of mental counter in my head ticking down. I knew we only needed one more gen to be completed. And right before the redhead got struck, I completed the gen and heard a noise ringing out throughout CP_Gravel Pit.
You may have finished the generators, but in your haste you forgot to do bones. Suddenly, the redhead was thrown to the ground, and seconds after him, the long-haired man. We were confused until we saw a totem in front of us. Somehow, I just knew 4 others around the map, and he was drawing power from one of them. The Bruce Campbell look-alike had opened one of the doors, but I couldn't leave 2 of them without him. I ran around the map looking for a lit totem, and as the seconds passed, I felt my head get lighter and lighter.
Luckily, I looked at the corner of my vision and noticed something. 4 squares had been imprinted into my vision. I don't know what any of them did, but I hoped they would help me in these trying times. As I found a dull totem, I crouched down and tried to destroy it. I noticed the Bruce Campbell look-alike trying to gingerly swipe at the bones. Confused, I showed him how to properly cleanse bones by violently kicking the totem. I then ran around in a frenzy, kicking each and every bone with vigor. I had a sense of dread as I cleansed the final bone.
I kicked the final bone and suddenly appendages starting shooting out of the ground. The Bruce Campbell look-alike was the first to be impaled. I sprinted for the gate as the very ground behind me started to tear open, and the spear-like arms started tearing the world apart. The red-haired girl was next, but I only heard her scream. I got to the gate to see the long-haired man was already there, teabagging the Shadow Doctor, thinking he was safe in the area around the gate. I dashed past him as an arm shot straight through him. As I escaped, I felt that I had finally defeated the Shadow Doctor. I didn't stop running until I had reached a campfire. I relaxed there and 3 others gathered around me, each having escaped their own monsters. Confident we were safe, we laid down. But I couldn't shake the feeling that someone was watching me.